Okay, picture this. You're going to create a brand new sea. Not on Mars, not in some sci-fi movie, but right in the middle of one of the driest places on the entire continent. It sounds completely made up, but believe it or not, it's a very real and very, very ambitious plan for Nevada.
You know, to really wrap your head around how wild this idea is, you've first got to understand Nevada itself. It's a place where, as the saying goes, water just does not stick around. The state gets almost no rain, and the heat is so brutal that any drop that does fall is pretty much gone the second it hits the ground. The whole landscape is just defined by thirst. So what's the big idea to fix this? Get this, a $16 billion plan to suck water out of the Pacific Ocean, make it fresh, and then pump it hundreds of miles inland to create a massive 1,500 square miles sea in the desert. An idea this big, this audacious, you just have to ask, where did they even come up with it? Well, this isn't Nevada's first time dreaming of a water-filled future. Turns out the state's history is kind of littered with these gigantic, continent-spanning plans that, in the end, just became failed dreams. And if you want to see the ghost of these past ambitions, look no further than something called NAWAPA. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this thing. This wasn't just building a canal. This was a colossal plan from the 60s to literally divert rivers from all the way up in Alaska and Canada and completely re-engineer the continent's plumbing to send water down to 35 different U.S. states.
So why didn't that happen? Well, these mega projects pretty much all collapsed under their own weight. The cost was astronomical, especially back then. The political fights were huge. I mean, Canada, for example, basically said, no way, you are not having our rivers. It was seen as a threat to their national sovereignty. Then you add in the fact that people were starting to realize the ecological damage, and yeah, plan after plan got put on the shelf, leaving Nevada as thirsty as ever. Which brings us to today and a totally new strategy. Instead of trying to move existing freshwater from up north, this modern blueprint has a completely different idea. Let's just make new freshwater by taking it straight from the Pacific Ocean. So let's follow a drop of water on its journey here. First, these huge desalination plants on the California coast would use what's called reverse osmosis. It's basically using super high pressure to squeeze seawater through a filter to get the salt out. From there, a massive network of pumps and pipes would shoot that fresh water inland, where it would start filling up these ancient dry lake beds in Nevada, turning places like Big Smoky and Monitor Valley into a huge chain of man-made lakes. But a project this massive needs two things in huge amounts: money and power. So how on earth does the plan deal with its $16 billion price tag?
If you look at this cost breakdown, one thing really jumps out. $4 billion, a full quarter of the entire budget, is for solar panels. And that's the core logic of the whole plan. It's going to be powered by the one thing the desert has way more of than anything else: sunshine. The place that desperately needs the water also has the perfect energy source to get it there. And here's the big sales pitch. That $16 billion investment, proponents say it's nothing compared to the long-term payoff, which they project to be in the trillions, with a T. The idea is that this new water would just unlock this massive potential for new farms, new cities, and new industries, paying for itself over and over and over again. So, you've got a plan that uses clean energy, pays for itself, and solves a gigantic problem. It sounds, well, almost too good to be true, which of course leads to the big question, what's the catch? Because with a project this size, you know there's always a catch. Now, to be fair, the people who designed this plan aren't naive. They knew right from the start that they were up against two enormous engineering challenges: evaporation and all the toxic waste you get from desalination. Okay. First up, evaporation. How do you stop your brand new sea from just vanishing into the hot desert air? Well, the proposed solution is actually pretty clever. Instead of one giant static lake, they'd manage the water dynamically. The water levels would change with the seasons, moving into deeper, more shaded canyons during the summer. This keeps the surface area smaller, reduces exposure to the sun, and is supposed to dramatically cut down on evaporation. The second big problem is the brine. For every 2 gallons of fresh water you make, you're left with about a gallon of this toxic, super salty sludge. So what do you do with it? The plan's answer is amazing. Don't treat it like waste, treat it like a liquid mine. The idea is to build these facilities that can actually pull valuable minerals like lithium and magnesium right out of the brine. turning a huge, dangerous problem into yet another way to make money.
But look, solving the engineering puzzles is one thing. What about the environment? This is where the plan stops being a calculated risk and starts looking like an unprecedented ecological gamble.
When you introduce this much water into an ecosystem that's been dry for thousands of years, you could set off a domino effect of disasters. You could cause invasive grasses to explode, creating these grass bombs that are perfect fuel for massive wildfires. You might raise the groundwater and end up wiping out incredibly unique and endangered species, like the tiny Amargosa pupfish. Flooding salty desert flats could kick up toxic dust storms. And the lakes themselves? They'd be a magnet for invasive fish and animals that would wreck the native wildlife. It's just a whole chain of unintended consequences. Now, all these risks might sound kind of theoretical, but we actually have a real-world cautionary tale of what happens when you create a giant body of water in the middle of the desert. And that's the story of California's Salton Sea. You see, the Salton Sea was never supposed to exist. It was created by a total accident back in 1905 when the Colorado River broke through an irrigation canal. For a while, in the 50s, it boomed into this glamorous resort destination. But the lake had no outlet, so all the agricultural runoff, pesticides, and salt just collected there. By the 1990s, it was collapsing, becoming more and more toxic. And today, it's a complete ecological disaster. The contrast here really says it all. The dream was this vibrant paradise with yachts and beaches. The reality today is a stinking, toxic lake where the shores are literally covered in the bones of dead fish. The toxic dust that blows off the exposed lake bed is causing asthma and lung disease for people who live nearby. It's just a powerful, tragic lesson in what can go horribly wrong. Which brings us right back to that massive plan for Nevada, and it leaves us with the ultimate question. Is this ambitious project the future of water management? A truly bold solution for a thirsty planet? Or is it just a multi-billion-dollar slow-motion disaster doomed to repeat the exact same mistakes all over again? All right, let's just jump right in with a question that sounds simple on the surface, but it could change literally everything about how we live. We're talking about a future that's built on a completely radical new idea of abundance. I mean, really, let that sink in for a second. What happens to our society, to our economies, to life itself, when the one thing that decides where cities are built and how we survive suddenly becomes available to everyone, everywhere for free? The implications are just staggering. And here's the wildest part. The key to all this isn't some brand new sci-fi invention. Nope. The whole principle is based on a clever little toy from 2,000 years ago. It's an ancient idea that if we scale it up, could set off the single biggest resource shift in all of human history. So to really get how we arrive at a world of free water, we've got to go back, way back to the 1st century in Alexandria. This is it. It's called Heron's Fountain. And it's this brilliant little contraption that uses air pressure and the weight of water to shoot a jet of water into the air, kind of like magic. It looks like it's powering itself. For centuries, it was just a cool party trick, a novelty. But here is the massive leap in thinking. What happens when you take that simple idea and you don't just make it bigger, you make it planetary? What if the water providing the pressure wasn't in a small container, but was the entire colossal weight of the ocean itself? And that is the core idea behind what we're calling the gravity engine. It's not some machine that's fighting against physics. It's a system that works with the planet's own incredible power. You know, the best part about this whole thing is how beautifully simple it is. You can break it down into just 3 steps. First, you've got pressure, and I mean massive pressure, from the sheer weight of the ocean. Second, that pressure gets funneled, forcing deep seawater up through a series of chambers. And finally, this creates a self-sustaining cycle, a perpetual fountain powered by nothing but gravity. And this is the whole ballgame. The outcome isn't just a trickle of water. It's an unlimited supply of fresh, desalinated water that requires no electricity, no fuel, no huge energy costs. It just flows. So what happens when you suddenly have an endless river of free fresh water? Well, whole parts of our civilization just start to transform. And the very first wave of change, that's going to be agriculture. You can see the difference right here. On one side, that's our world today, right? Where our food supply is basically a hostage to droughts and crazy weather. And on the other side, a world of total abundance. We're talking about turning the world's great deserts into its new breadbaskets. Just picture it, 300-story hydroponic towers rising out of the sand in places like Phoenix, growing enormous amounts of food right where people actually live. And the ripple effect of that is just huge. I mean, when food is grown locally, the need to ship it halfway across the planet just evaporates. We're looking at a 70% drop in global food shipping. Starvation could literally become a relic of the past. And it goes so far beyond just farming. This new water creates a whole new ecology. We could make these ultra-deep desert lakes that barely evaporate. Toxic dust storms? Gone. You could have automated drone swarms that stop wildfires before they even start and take out invasive species. And all that salt that's removed from the water, we just return it to deep lava vents where the planet can just reabsorb it. Okay, let's move on to the second wave, because this is where things get really interesting. See, free water doesn't just grow food. It also cools the future of our digital world. So here's a fact you might not know. For those massive data centers, the brains of our entire modern economy, their biggest problem isn't processing power, it's heat. They need a mind-boggling amount of water just to keep from melting down. So right now, where you can build a data center is totally limited by whether you can get enough water to cool it. But with a gravity engine, poof, that bottleneck is gone. All of a sudden, the hottest places on Earth, cities like Riyadh, become the absolute perfect places for AI. They've got endless sun for solar, and now endless water for cooling. Deserts become the new capitals of computing. Okay, this next transformation is maybe the most incredible of all, mainly because it's a total accident. It's an unexpected side effect. While this system is solving our problems on land, it quietly starts healing the oceans themselves. And here's how simple it is. Every single time the system pulls in seawater to make it fresh, that water has to be filtered first, which means the very act of making fresh water is also cleaning the ocean, passively pulling out all the junk. Microplastics, oils, chemicals. I just love this quote from the source material. It calls this global network of fountains a set of planetary-scale kidneys for the ocean. Just think about that. A global filtration system running 24/7 with absolutely zero energy cost, healing our oceans almost as an afterthought. So, when you start adding all this up, abundant food, unlimited computing power, healing oceans, you realize this isn't just a series of small improvements. These are the building blocks of a whole new way of living. We're talking about entering a true post-scarcity world. And how do you get all this water where it needs to go? Well, you create a planetary bloodstream. Forget open canals that lose water to evaporation. We're talking about sealed underground tunnels. Nothing evaporates, nothing leaks. It's basically a circulatory system for entire continents, getting water exactly where it's needed. So what about the money? What's the economic impact? The numbers are almost hard to wrap your head around. Let's start with the absolute most conservative, low-end estimate for the long-term economic boost, $50 trillion. And that's just the starting point. The high-end estimate is a mind-blowing $90 trillion. And even that's probably lowballing it, because how do you even put a price tag on what abundant water makes possible? Thriving cities, a stable planet, life itself.
Which really brings us to the final and maybe the most important point. This changes the entire story of humanity. Future historians could look back at this moment as the fork in the road, the time we decided to stop fighting over what little we have, and instead started building a world where the essentials are for everyone.
Because, the science here is plausible. The engineering, it's just a matter of scale. The real challenge isn't a technical one. It's a human one. Are we ready for a technology that no single country or company could ever own? Are we as a species actually prepared for that kind of abundance? That's the real question, isn't it?